Many activities carried out on board, both at sea and in dock, are routine. Personnel may be very well practiced in what they do, but routine can induce complacency. Attention to the detail of safe operation can be lost.
What?
Incidents like these really do occur. They are well documented, and too many seafarers have lost their lives or limbs or livelihoods through the incorrect or unsafe operation of hatch covers. It is not only death or injury that we should be concerned about. The entire safety of a vessel and its crew is dependent on the hatch covers being able to resist heavy seas. And inadequately maintained hatch covers can carry a huge economic price. Each year, leaking hatch covers result in cargo claims amounting to many millions of dollars. Not just hatch covers which leak badly. Even a small amount of water can ruin certain cargoes, leading to higher insurance premiums and, in some cases, damaging the ship owner's commercial reputation. If steel comes into contact with salt water, it will almost certainly be rejected by the receiver. Bagged cargoes, like rice, coffee, chemicals and cement, are also highly sensitive to water damage, as are bulk cargoes, particularly those intended for human consumption, such as grain. In fact, a recent study showed that approximately 1/3 of all major bulk cargo claims were caused by hatch cover leakage. Some cargoes could even endanger the ship. For example, direct reduced iron, DRI, may catch fire if it gets wet, and wood pulp expands significantly on contact with water and can cause serious structural damage. In spite of this, there are few signs that the situation is improving. A study carried out by a major P&I insurer shows that defective hatch covers remain the predominant finding during condition surveys of dry cargo ships. The aim of this program, and the accompanying booklet, is to stress the importance of operating and maintaining hatch covers safely and correctly in order to prevent personal injuries, to protect the vessel's cargo, and to preserve the integrity of the ship. Hatch covers vary considerably in design and operation, but in general they are either single pull, folded, rolled up, rolled to the side, stacked, or lifted away. Most designs incorporate roller wheels on the sides of the hatch cover panels, which travel along a metal trackway. The panels are moved either by chains, wires, rack and pinion, or hydraulically. Some types may also be lifted on or off by gantry or crane. Hatch covers are heavy items which may weigh up to 100 tons. That is why, when being opened or closed, they pose such a risk to life and limb. Proper safety precautions must be followed at all times. Hatch covers need to be strong enough to resist the forces exerted by heavy seas breaking over them. 1 cubic metre of water weighs about a ton. Therefore, a large wave may mean several hundred tons of water suddenly crashing down on top of a hatch cover all at once. Heavy seas cause a vessel to flex, and ships are designed to hog, sag and twist at sea to minimize the stresses on the hull. The shape of the hull also alters with the weight and distribution of the cargo, and even with water pressure as the draft changes during loading. Although hatch covers may be stiffer than the weather deck, they should still move in unison with the ship's hull as much as possible to remain watertight. Therefore, a limited amount of movement of the hatch covers is allowable to compensate for the flexing of the ship. The components which keep the covers in position are the locators and stoppers, which guide them into their correct closing positions, the cleats, which hold them in place, and the bearing pads, sacrificial strips of steel which transfer the weight of the covers onto the deck structure. All allow for limited movement of the hatch covers so that they do not take up all the dynamic forces acting on the hull. To prevent the entry of water, there is the panel side plating, then the rubber packing and the compression bar, although in some designs the rubber rests on the coaming table, sometimes called the top plate, itself, and then the drain channel, sited inboard of the compression bar, and the last barrier to water entry to the hold during exceptional weather conditions. The most important barrier to the penetration of water is the rubber packing resting on the compression bar. There will be distortion at this interface with the flexing of the ship's hull. Therefore, the rubber packing needs to be sufficiently elastic to accommodate any changes of shape. This demands a particular type of rubber compound obtained from specialist manufacturers. Here are some typical examples. The Flex Seal rubber packing, the cat or sliding profile, the solid rubber packing, and the sponge core. Standard packings should last for several years as long as they are well maintained. Hatch covers are manufactured with a specific design compression, the degree of compression necessary to keep water out without permanently deforming the rubber. Overcompression leads to the rubber setting, resulting in a deep, permanent imprint developing along the surface as the rubber begins to harden. To avoid overcompression and maintain resilience, the rubber packing must not take the full weight of the hatch cover. Hatch covers are therefore designed to sit on supporting steelwork rather than rest on the rubber packing. This is normally referred to as the steel-to-steel contact. In older designs, the hatch cover side plating sits directly on the coaming surface. But this arrangement can result in fretting, grooving or abrasion damage. And as the hatch side plating succumbs to wear or corrosion, control is lost over the compression of the rubber packing. More recent designs incorporate bearing pads, which take the vertical load of the hatch cover whilst keeping the rubber packing at its design compression. Steel-to-steel contact is limited to the area of the pads, making it easier to ensure that design limits are maintained. If steel-to-steel contact arrangements wear down below their specified limits, it is possible that the rubber packings will be permanently deformed, allowing leakage. Replacing the rubbers is not the correct solution. Unless defective steelwork is permanently repaired, simply replacing the rubber packing may cure the symptoms for a short while, but not the cause. The primary function of the cleats is to hold the hatch covers in position when the ship is at sea. It is not their job to pull the hatch covers down for a tighter seal, but rather to allow the panels to move without lifting when the hull starts to flex. A very important rule is not to over-tighten the securing devices. Over-tightening the cross-joint wedges, the quick-acting cleats and bolts or screws may permanently damage the rubber seals and may also deform the rubber washers of the cleats. This causes them to become less flexible and makes the whole system too rigid. These and other signs that hatch covers are not performing to specification will be picked up by a surveyor.
Okay, on board of this ship we are dealing with a folding type hatch cover, double skin type, and the sealing situation is a direct contact between the packing rubber and the coaming table. On the coaming table here we can see the imprint marks left by the packing rubber. With hatch covers, and in order to maintain a metal-to-metal contact, we will see that various types of steel strips can be fitted on the coaming table. On this particular one, we see that there is no evidence of contact with the stool or with the mating half on the hatch cover panel. So let us have a look further on to see what the situation is. Okay, we have the perimeter quick acting cleats here. Here on this bearing pad, we will see that we have evidence of metal-to-metal contact. Paint coating has been chafed. We see a little bit rust formation. So that indicates definitely that in this position we do have a contact. Here we see damages to the inboard hatch rim. The inboard hatch rim basically forms the barrier between the drain channel and the cargo hold. So if we see any damages in these areas, that may well affect the integrity of the drain channel and result eventually in water infiltrating into the ship's hold. Okay, we see here a lifting jack, which is basically used to bring the panel wheels into their rolling position on the track table. Wastage on this area should be limited. We can see here, however, that there is a little bit of wastage. The steel pad here is worn out. The quick acting cleats, they basically serve to keep the panels in position when the ship is at sea. Therefore they need to be well maintained, they need to be strong. Here we can see that the brackets in the structure is still okay. The hinge head is moving freely. The rubber washer is still in good condition. Also the rod itself is okay. The thread on the nut here is well greased and in order. So we can basically say that this cleat is fit for duty. During inspections, it's often overlooked to look at the ship's structure. The structure of the coaming and the brackets has to be checked to see that it is strong enough and that the steel thickness is still substantial. So we can check that here in way of the flanges. We can have a look at the bottom, and we can check for the thickness here at the cutout of the bracket. So when the hatch cover panels are in a tilted position, we have the opportunity to look to the perimeter seals, which then go over into corner pieces, which then on their turn extend into a cross-joint rubber packing. It is very important to see that those corner pieces are a genuine type and not a shipboard-made piece of rubber, which is made up of different sorts of pieces glued together, because that would result in uneven compression. It's equally important to check that the packing rubber is still sufficiently flexible and free of any other form of deterioration or damage. So the hatch covers, they are heavy items of equipment, and in order to open them we need mechanical power, which is generally made by hydraulic systems. Because these hydraulic systems do put or exert a lot of pressure on the steel structure, on the pedestal of the hydraulic system, we have to check the transition zones for any cracks or deformations. Okay, we are here at the hydraulic cylinder station to open up and close the hatch covers. We see that we have structural stiffening members here, which is necessary to take up all the loads exerted on the hatch panels and the pedestals by the opening action. Any area which would basically give rise to a deformation or which shows a deformation should be investigated more in detail. So on most types of hatch covers we will find a drain system which allows evacuation of water which should or which could infiltrate through the hatch covers. Basically these drain channels, they are the last safety barrier that we can find. We will find them along the coaming, around the perimeter of the coaming, and also here in way of the cross joints. So the water is being drained away from the cross joints into the perimeter drain channel and will then be evacuated through a drain hole, which should always be clear and free, and will then run through a drain pipe out again on deck. The drain pipe should be checked to see that it is structurally sound and definitely not corroded through. Okay, here we see hydraulic leakage from the lifting jacks. Hydraulic leaks, they are a threefold problem. First of all, they indicate an operational problem on the system. Secondly, they may cause pollution, and they are also a serious slip and fall hazard. We see here the securing devices. It's imperative that they are always in use when the hatch covers are opened up in tilted or when they are in tilted position. We should have a look to the structural strength of these securing hooks, see whether they can move freely and whether it is a common practice that they are used on board during hatch cover operations.
So, hatch covers are complicated pieces of equipment and vary widely from ship to ship. There should be a manual for the hatch covers on board your vessel, and you will gain an important insight into their operation and maintenance if you take some time to look through it. The opening and closing of hatch covers is usually straightforward, but there are some basic rules which must be observed. At least 2 crew members should be involved, one to handle the controls and one to keep an eye on safety issues. To open the covers, firstly, warn all crew members involved in the operation and clear the area of all non-essential personnel. Communicate by radio if possible, as shouted orders may be masked by the noise of machinery. Some vessels may have an audible warning system which sounds when the hatch covers are operated. Now remove the hatch cover securing devices. Check cleats, cross-joint wedges and safety equipment such as retaining pins, arrestor chains and safety catches to make sure that they're cleared away and in good working order. If the hatch covers have been used to carry cargo, inspect all surfaces carefully for any signs of damage. Now switch on the power unit. Raise the covers. On some ships, the hatch covers are fitted with eccentric roller wheels which must be rotated with a lifting bar prior to opening. This itself is a hazard, as the bar can fly back and cause injury. Other systems use hydraulic jacks to achieve this task. Once raised, and provided it is safe to do so, apply the power and open the hatch covers. Never climb on the covers while they are moving. As the covers are opened, look out for any uneven movement, unusual vibration, or abnormal variations in speed. If necessary, stop the operation completely and investigate further. Once the hatch covers are fully open, apply the locking devices and switch off the power. Open hatch covers provide an ideal opportunity for the crew to carry out a detailed inspection. Even though time is often short, much is at risk if the hatch covers are not examined regularly. Inspect the rubber packings, looking especially for signs of deterioration or excess wear. Look at the steel-to-steel contact areas, with particular attention paid to the bearing pads. Check the compression bars for straightness and even height. Check the drainage channels and non-return valves for blockages. If the hatch covers are operated by hydraulics, examine all pipes, hoses and joints for signs of leakage. It is good practice to record the details of all hatch cover inspections. In the event of cargo claims, such records may also be needed to demonstrate that due diligence was exercised at the outset of the voyage. Cargo operations can often damage the hatch rims and panels and leave debris. Before closing the hatch covers, it is essential to check the compression bars for damage, to clear the coaming tops, and to remove all debris from the non-return valves. Closing the hatches is also a routine procedure, but often subject to greater pressure of time. It is therefore very important to guard against complacency and observe all safety procedures. The consequences of not doing so can be catastrophic. At intervals, the hatch covers should be tested thoroughly to make sure they are still watertight. The most common method is to carry out a hose test, directing water at the cross-joint seals and around the edges of the covers to identify any leaks. This should be done with the cleats and wedges in place. It is also good practice to fit plastic bags to the non-return valves during a hose test, as the water overflowing onto the deck often makes it difficult to check the correct operation of the valve. If the bag fills with water, it is clear that the valve is working properly, but that the hatch covers are leaking. Alternative tests include looking for light infiltration and the use of chalk, and any visible traces of leakage should be investigated. Even though a vessel's hatch covers may appear to be watertight after carrying out a hose test in port, there is a possibility that they still leak when at sea. It is important to understand the reason why. The hose test shows that contact between the rubber seal and the compression bar keeps water out. But areas of light contact could open up on passage when the ship's hull flexes, allowing water entry. These areas may be identified with ultrasound. How?
In this test rig, we have an ultrasonic emitter. Emits artificial ultrasound, like you hear now. Even when the lid is down, you still hear the ultrasounds coming out.
The leaking sound shows that there are still air gaps between the frame of the rig and the lid, even though the lid is heavy enough to trap a thin piece of paper. That contact would make it appear to be watertight, but it isn't.
When we put some compression on the test rig, the sound will immediately disappear. Contact is not enough. We really need compression.
So, a portable ultrasonic tester, relatively cheap to buy, especially when compared to the value of most cargo claims, and easy to use after proper training, is an ideal tool for checking the watertight integrity of hatch covers. The surveyor first records open hatch readings taken from the side of the open hold, or, should the hatch covers already be down, he will get the same reading from an open booby hatch. Once the hatches are closed, he takes the closed hatch readings, which of course should be significantly lower than the open hatch readings. The test can be done whether or not the hold contains cargo, and also irrespective of temperature and weather conditions. Because the test pinpoints gaps and areas of poor compression with a high degree of precision, repairs can be carried out accurately and in a cost-effective manner. The test readings can be downloaded to a laptop and the ship's own computer, thus providing essential information in the event of cargo claims. There are other issues concerning hatch covers which must be considered. Hatch sealing tape may be applied to the covers as an additional precaution or if required by charterers. However, its use may accelerate corrosion where it has been applied, and it may also be washed away during heavy weather. Sealing tape should never be used as a cheap substitute for repairs to hatch covers which already leak. Find out what is causing the problem and correct it. The same applies to high-expansion foam. This does not adhere well to the coaming table and may block drain channels. Foam particles may even contaminate the cargo. High-expansion foam has also been known to force hatch covers apart and push them upwards, increasing the possibility of leakage. Its use should be avoided. The drain valves, which should be fitted with threaded fire caps, are designed to work as non-return devices. If they fail, it is relatively common for them to be replaced with a length of fire hose. Such an arrangement is acceptable, provided the hose is sufficiently long to bend back on itself freely. Remember, although hatch covers are very heavy and strong, they and their sealing systems are sophisticated pieces of engineering, designed to keep water out of the hold, even when the ship is flexing on the high seas. These are the key maintenance and inspection points. Examine the hatch covers, coamings, and securing devices regularly for defects. This means on every watch whilst at sea, and the covers should be checked externally in detail at least once a week on passage, paying particular attention to the forward 25% of the ship's length, where sea loads are normally greatest. Inspect the rubber packings for wear, damage, and overcompression. If overcompression is evident, the condition of the bearing pads or other areas of steel-to-steel contact will need to be investigated. If the imprint left by the compression bar is off-center, check further to see whether the hatch covers are misaligned. Apply a compatible grease in a thin layer to the surface of the rubber packings to reduce friction. If they do need to be replaced, always use those recommended by the hatch cover manufacturer. Cheaper alternatives are a false economy. They may not be as effective and may require replacing more frequently. Proper replacements add a little to the cost, but may prevent a very expensive cargo claim. The retaining channels must be free of rust and the new rubber glued in correctly. Regular checks should be made on the compression bars for height and straightness, the trackways for smoothness and evenness, the bearing pads for height, wear and cracks, and the drain channels and drain valves. Lubricate all moving parts regularly. And when recoating such equipment, take care not to paint over grease connections, screw threads, and bearings. Inspect opening mechanisms regularly for signs of wear or damage. If the hatch covers are moved by chains, check that they are of equal length. Adjust them if necessary. With hydraulic systems, as well as checking for leaks, check that the tank is topped up to the correct level. And send a sample of hydraulic oil for analysis, as recommended by the manufacturer. Ensure that the hydraulic power pack station is heated or cooled well in advance of the vessel entering areas of extreme temperature. Clean up any oil or grease, and keep a written record of all inspections and maintenance carried out, and make sure that there are sufficient spare parts on board. As you have seen, The safe operation and maintenance of hatch covers need not be difficult or complicated. If you follow these guidelines, you will minimize the possibility of the hatch covers admitting water and damaging the cargo, and more importantly, you will be protecting the lives of everyone on board.